Thank you, Louise, for inviting me to this presentation. Today, I would like to share with you our program called Share a Pot. This is a very familiar scene to many of us. I know it shows many, mainly Chinese family pictures. This is what I grew up with, eating together with my family, big gatherings, and there's a lot of laughter, a lot of, and we eat well. Yeah, and this is a typical scene in a Singapore family. Yeah, these are also scenes from Singapore. There are other people as well. They are not as fortunate as we are. Mr. Sun here, he lives alone ever since his mother died, and he receives 2 meals a day from Willing Hearts. And he essentially spends most of his time on his own. So other than the 2 meals that he gets, he doesn't have anything else to motivate him to eat well or to move around more in his community. So in Singapore, we have progressed very, very fast, and we've gone very, very far. You can see in the background the progress that we have made. But in the foreground, you will see that some people are left behind, and a lot of them are the seniors. They wonder when they look out in the background, these spanking new buildings, new progress, technology. The children move out to work and they spend the rest of the day by themselves. Not all of them get 2 good meals a day. So there is a increasing frailty syndrome that is arising even in urban Singapore, in a very affluent country like Singapore. And how does that work? As we all age, right, we will face some physical and mental decline. And many people will withdraw, avoid seeking help to maintain their dignity, and that puts them into social isolation. And when they are isolated, they will lose the motivation to be active and to eat well, and that brings them further down into physical and mental decline. And so this is the vicious spiral of frailty. Can we do anything about it? And the good news is, yes, we can. And that's the reason why I'm still very optimistic about our future. How do we want to do this? So we started off with a very simple concept of health and fitness, as simple as my mother's soup. So when I was young, I come from a Cantonese family. My mother boils soup, right, from bones, mainly pork bones or chicken bones. And we didn't know it was delicious, but we didn't know it was really very nutritious. But what happened is that if we boil bone to a rolling boil for hours, we actually extract a lot of protein into the soup. And if we acidify the soup to a certain extent, either we using natural ingredients like tomatoes, or by adding a bit of vinegar to the soup, right, we actually pull out the calcium from their bones into the soup as well. So what we get is really a soup that is high in protein and calcium. That is actually now scientifically proven. Yeah, so my mother was really very wise. The second scientific fact that we have learned is that within 2 hours of any exercise, if you take a high protein meal, the protein will go into making muscle. That is another scientific fact. So either you have a high protein meal first or you exercise first, as long as it is within 2 hours of each other, almost all that protein goes into making muscles. But it isn't the protein in the soup that makes strong muscles. It just makes muscles. What makes it strong is the exercise. Yeah, and we know that any weight-bearing exercise as well will prevent osteoporosis. It builds bones, or it prevents bone erosions. So when we combine the two together, a high protein meal, as can be found in the bone broth, and exercise, we can actually build strength in older people. When we started this program, we didn't have much resources. So we said, we can't exactly bring the bone broth or the exercise to people. So we said, let's ask them to come down. And when they came down and started to exercise together and eat together, all right, they couldn't very well do it without talking to each other. And so they had also social engagement. And that meant that we could build brain, because we know brain is one power. If you don't use it, you will lose it. Yeah. So building brain. And in addition, one final side effect, actually, we didn't expect this, was that when people started to talk together, all right, eat and exercise together, they started to care for each other. So the last piece of building was in building community, right? Building bonds. And so activities became much more meaningful when they came together. And we knew that something like this needed to be simple so that they could just plug and play to get this going. So we designed the program to be an inclusive design. We said that, if we started to tell people you can come to this program if you are frail, essentially we are telling them, okay, you failed the test, so you can come. People don't like to come to a program where they are first labeled as a failure. So we did not focus on frailty. We focused on what was strong with them. So positive framing really excites people into action. We didn't want this to be a charity program where people feel pity instead of feeling energy. So this was meant to be a project that emphasized dignity, not charity. People who come were not needy people. They weren't coming to be served. They were coming to participate. And so they would wash their own bowls, they would clean up after themselves, and they would help each other. And we also know that actually individually we can do a lot, but together we can do a lot more. So the program is really very easy. It's a low barrier for entry, very easy and very fun. Essentially, a partner site is trained with a starter kit, including the recipes, the toolkits, as well as any equipment that they may need. Then we would recruit participants who would get a step tracker, a good workout, and a hearty soup at the end of it. And every week after that, they would join their new friends for exercise and soup. To know if they were growing stronger, we actually conduct basic functional assessments, which include their grip strength, their functional reach, and short physical performance battery that included the measurement of their balance, their strength, and their walking speed every 6 months. So that would be one way they could see for themselves that they were actually getting stronger when they came down. Yeah, and lives have been changed by the program. Let me introduce you to Uncle Francis. This is Uncle Francis. He was 91 years old when I first met him at one of our first share a pot setups. He came in a wheelchair actually, and I looked rather doubtfully at him. I'm very ashamed to say that. And I asked him, Uncle, if you come to this program, you will need to stand up and exercise and be measured. And he looked up and he said to me, okay. And he stood up. He, did whatever the exercises needed him to. And then he walked home for the first time. The next day, the next week, he came back in his wheelchair, but he walked home. And he did that for a few months. And after 7 to 8 months, he told his daughter, I think it's okay. If you get me a stick, I can walk now. So he started to walk to and fro. And this is AJ, who is the exercise trainer, who really is one of the energy bunnies of the program. He called out Uncle Francis and said, can you teach them how to do some exercises? And he really fully came up and started to do the exercises that he said he used to learn when he was in the military. I don't know what military. At 91 years old, he must have fought quite a lot for Singapore. And when we did an exercise video, he gamefully, again, came along to be filmed. And he said, this would inspire a lot of people to do exercises, because if I can, they can as well. So he didn't just, get up, do exercises and got better. He went around to be our roadshow champion. And I remember on a conference, I was asked to present, share a report, and I invited him to share alongside me. He amazed the crowd, because he just jumped out of his chair and spoke with such a strong voice that they really couldn't see that this was a 90-something-year-old gentleman. Yeah, he's still around. Yeah. And other people that I'd like to share about, Uncle Chen, he basically, when the volunteers go, whatever he has left, he will just give them freely, because he knows that this goes to feeding older people or vulnerable people. People come forward, they say that they don't know anything, like Auntie Sharon, she says, I only know how to cook because I've only looked after my family all these years of my life. And that's exactly the gift that is so valuable to us. So at this wellness kampong, the uncle who used to be a farmer started to grow vegetables to give to her to cook the soup. And that was like quite a good synergy between all the community participants. So we have grown since 2015, when we first started. Now we have 32 sites island-wide. We still have 12 sites waiting to get started. These 32 sites currently run up to 34 weekly sessions for 1,800 participants. Mostly they are seniors, and there are about 220 registered volunteers doing this work right now. And there are also intergenerational effects, because some of these sites are actually schools. And it's very heartening to see young children interacting and putting their creative ideas to how to get older people on their feet. And a lot of them have ended up teaching the older people how to be tech savvy as well. And then, 23rd January 2020, the first COVID patient in Singapore. And so we were disrupted, okay? And we had to stop our activities during the circuit breaker. And increasingly, we did see that people missed the activity. So a participant said that her kids wanted her to be safe. So they said, don't go out, stay home as much as possible. And others noticed that their neighbors were not as strong as before. And some of the volunteers called their participants, and many of them cried because they felt very, very lonely indeed. But there was an indomitable spirit that lived on in many of the sites. So exercise sessions went online. Agape Village, this is Our Lady Star of the Sea Church. This is Sri Narayana Mission Home. And this is Wellness Kampong. They just continue. No soup, but they continue, which was a good sign. And they started something new now. And I think the residents, they love it. They're really excited to restart, It may not be in big groups, but the care is still there. And we are hopeful that their bones and their muscles will remain strong. So if the mountain cannot come to Muhammad, we definitely are going to the mountain. Yeah. And very heartening this, on 28 June, Share a Pot at Agape Village celebrated their 5th anniversary online. nothing stops them. So this is really very heartening indeed. And I think what we want to do is now to make it such that we can get to them. So the question that we faced was, how can we reduce the impact of COVID-19 on the physical, mental, and social frailty of vulnerable people and ensure the continuity of contact and care throughout pandemic situations? This is what we need to do right now to make our share report pandemic proof. Yeah. And we've worked out what we need. We need a digital registration system because now we can't be there physically to register them. When we have our exercises online, we also do a digital registration. And on this registration, we also are going to do their measurements, bringing the soup to them. We've started with the thermal flask, and we're also doing what we would call a eco-friendly tapao alternative. In case we run out of thermal pots, then out comes the furoshiki to wrap whatever container that we can put the soup in. Then home-based activities, we are bringing the exercise kits as well as the exercise booklets to them. Yeah, we still train the volunteers. There's a lot more to the training now. We will need to teach them online facilitation skills and digital and other required skills, in addition to food hygiene, food handling, as well as measuring the physical status of the participants. Well, we really appreciate these volunteers. So once a year, we still call them back to appreciate their contributions. And we would like to also try, actually, this is something new, to do pop-up share a pot in spaces where people are allowed to meet in small groups. Yeah, so these are what we think would take us to the new pandemic-proof situation, where we can be agile, flexible, and safe for the new normal. So we can flex from fully home-based, like what you saw in the video, okay, to minimal center activity where they can use the center to prepare soups. They can do hybrids as well as we can go back to fully centered base one day. We look forward to the day when we can get back together again. So we would just adjust our activities along this continuum with whatever safe distancing measures that are, effective for that period of the pandemic. Yeah, and it's not to brag, but it is to say that we did want to know that we did want to know if this program would stand up to the scrutiny of a global community. And so in 2017, we were awarded the Social Impact Prize by IF. And it was very encouraging to us. And in 2019, we were also given another award for being a service that connects people, partners, healthcare professionals with the community. So that's the end of my sharing. Thank you very much. Yeah.